Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And before I do, I'd just like to join with you in also welcoming the women that are in today, particularly the women sitting county councillors from the Women's Caucus, and they're very welcome into Leinster House, and it's great to see them. If anything, we don't see enough of them. And as said earlier on in the dining room, I look forward to many of them competing in the next elections, be they Dáil elections and Shannon elections, because we can have Women's Caucus and other groups, but it's important we bring them right into the centre of politics and into elections. So I just want to take that opportunity to follow on what the Cathaoirleach was saying. Last Cathaoirleach, I will just get back to the point in hand, which is I asked for the need for the Minister to make a statement on the inclusion of genetically modified ingredients used in animal feedstuffs used for sheep, cattle and poultry in Ireland, and can the Department of Agriculture confirm the level of GM foodstuffs within the agricultural sector? That was somewhat modified by the actual commencement that's before us. So I just wanted to read that into the record there. I suppose, Minister, genetically modified food is a big issue. It's a controversial issue for some. And I suppose it was initially brought to my attention by the Irish Rural Association. And I'm going to read into the record a feed from their, from their website and from social media platforms. And they say, and this is the kernel of the issue, so I think it's appropriate that I actually put this on the record of the House. So Irish Rural Association says, so now we are asking for a bit of help from you, all out there, who may use animal feedstuff in bags for cattle, sheep, hens, etc. Have you actually read the label of the feedstuffs? And does that look at that in some detail? And on close examination, you'll see that many of the feeds have a label saying produced from genetically modified soya beans. Does this bother anyone, they ask? And should we know more about it? Is the labelling clear enough? Is it big enough? And are people aware of it? So as for GM foods and crops, they say the hypocrisy of part of Ireland and the EU is stunning. While we pat ourselves on the back for banning growing of GM foods in Ireland, we import GM corn and soya beans by the millions and millions of tonnes. You will know that. I am aware of that too. And so the question really is, how do Bord Bia, Teagasc and the Department of Agriculture square the circle in terms of the export of Irish beef, when on average the content of a bag of winter feed for beef consists of 94% of GM corn, soya and alfalfa. So I think that's really the kernel of the issue, Minister. I think we need more education about it. It's not banned, but I think we need more education. We need bigger labelling. But I really am more interested today to know, how did the department quantify the amount? Do they keep a record of the amount of it? Because I think that's really important. And what's going on in terms of Teagasc, Department of Agriculture and on Bord Bia in terms of the monitoring of GM foods and GM foodstuffs? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Minister.
Thank you, Senator Boyhan, for raising this issue. In Ireland, over 80% of animal feed for ruminants is provided by grass, hay and silage, complemented where appropriate by compound feeds. From an animal feed perspective, the pig, poultry and dairy sectors in particular rely on high-protein feed rations that are primarily made up of soybean and maize byproducts. Ireland has a limited capacity to grow certain protein crops and is therefore more dependent on feed imports relative to other EU member states. Climatic conditions in Ireland are traditionally not suited to the cultivation of soybean, although improvements in crop breeding and availability of new varieties may change that. Therefore, we are particularly dependent on the global market for supplies of high-quality vegetable protein. Total annual feed production in 2021 was 5.4 million tonnes, an increase of 6% on the previous year, of which 1.3 million tonnes was homegrown, mainly cereals. In 2021, 4.1 million tonnes of feed material was imported, which was a 3% reduction compared to 2020. Of the 4.1 million tonnes imported, approximately 75% is sourced from third countries, mainly Argentina, USA, UK, Canada, Brazil, and historically Ukraine. Significant quantities of maize and oilseed rape meal are also imported from EU member states. 2.3 million tonnes of imported feed from third countries was genetically modified, representing 42% of the total animal feed production. The main genetically modified feed imported are maize and maize byproducts, soybean meal and soya hulls. Over 1 million tonnes of this imported genetically modified feed was maize or maize byproducts, distillers' dried grains and maize gluten feed. and approximately 800,000 tonnes was soya bean and soya meal. These consignments are imported from GM-producing regions, especially in the USA, Argentina, Brazil and Canada. It is important to the Irish agriculture industry, especially the sectors requiring rations with high protein content, that there is a consistent supply of quality feed that is not subject to delays, as there is limited scope for alternative protein substitution from home or EU-grown high-protein crops. In terms of use of GMOs in feed, the reality is that the feed materials containing GM make up the bulk of the market and provide the lowest cost source of proteins for feed manufacturers to use their products. It should be borne in mind that there is a significant additional cost of about 60 to 100 euros per tonne for non-GM feed, which can leave livestock production in Ireland at a competitive disadvantage compared to other countries that have the capacity to produce soya and other protein crops. This price differential would have a trickle-down effect on the overall feed prices, which have already seen significant rises since the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. The EU has a legislative framework in place for the authorisation of feed products consisting of or containing genetically modified ingredients on the markets of Member States. Only GM feed that has been authorised by the EU can be placed on that market. All applications for authorisation by the EU to place feed products consisting of or containing genetically modified ingredients on the markets of Member States are considered individually. Irish government policy is positive but precautionary on biotechnology, and a common voting position is adopted by Ireland for food and feed on the basis of a favourable opinion from the European Food Safety Authority and the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. Advance notification of feed imports is a legal requirement, and imports containing GM are notified accordingly. My department carries out risk-based analysis and testing for the presence of authorised and non-authorised GM in feed imports.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach. And I suppose that the real substance is in the last two lines there, that the Irish policy is cautious and that you carry out random testing. I think the important is that three things from that, and I want to thank you for your comprehensive reply, is that the Irish government needs to demonstrate their caution. We need to see more stats in terms of the testing, and that's something I can take up with the agricultural panel that I'm a member of, because I think we need, and thirdly, more importantly, a lot of people are not aware of GM feedstuffs in animals, and we talk at great length about not growing GM produce in this country, but we're feeding our animals sheep, poultry and cattle for beef with this modified food. So there is a little bit of a misunderstanding perhaps, but I think we need bigger labelling and we need more education, and we need to be upfront, open, honest and transparent with the fact that we are using GM foods in feeding our animals in this country. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Senator. I take your points on board. Certainly we have limited capacity to grow our own, and certainly it's something in this past year that my department has tried to support more growing of our own, which is, we couldn't grow GM food in Ireland. And in this regard, Minister McConalogue recently announced a second tillage incentive scheme, which has as its focus the purpose of increasing the amount of grain and forage homegrown, essentially, grown here in Ireland, with the aim of converting grassland to tillage use. And it's widely acknowledged that the first tillage incentive scheme contributed about a 6% increase in tillage area, or an additional 20,000 hectares in 2022. In addition to this, the Protein Aid Scheme, which is a payment to farmers for growing other protein crops such as beans, peas and lupins, also works to increase domestic production of protein crops. And these crops, which are also nitrogen fixing, also provide important environmental benefits as a co-benefit. So I think, look, we do need to probably grow more of our own, and we are aspiring to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.